Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thanks so much for dropping by this video. To anyone who's new to this channel, a very warm welcome. This is about the teachings of Christ. And right from the start, I need to differentiate what Christ actually taught from the religion that's been built around him. Christ didn't come to start a religion. He didn't come to create a structure or a belief system. What he came to do is to show people how to live. And he did that. He demonstrated that and he taught that. And as is very common throughout history, when there's a great teacher, things can get a little bumpy once that teacher is no longer around. And other people start to speak for that teacher. So Christ was, in my definition, a master, meaning that he was, able to be at peace at all moments, no matter what was going on. He was able to actually, it's written, to forgive the people who were killing his body. And not only that, he was able, through the power of God and through faith, and probably to some extent through his mind, able to manipulate matter. That's my definition of a master. So once the master is gone, and I don't think Christ is the only master to have ever walked on this earth. This has happened with other traditions and other teachers. Once the master is gone, things can get a little bumpy. Because what you have is people who aren't masters then interpreting and saying, well, this is what the master said. And instead of directly knowing the truth themselves, reading from a book, usually, or someone else who read from a book taught them something. Whereas a true master tends to get their information from the source. So okay, that was a long way of saying that, in my view, there's a big difference between what Christ actually taught and all the things that people who aren't Christ said Christ taught. So if you look around the world today, there's different estimates. You'll see an estimate of 10,000, 15,000 different Christian denominations. So in essence, you can say there's roughly 15,000 different interpretations of the teachings of Christ. Most of them you can probably lump under maybe 10, 15 different categories. There's maybe 10,000 denominations, but there's probably, if you really analyzed it, you would probably find that most of those denominations fall under, 5, 7, 10 major schools of theology. But that's just my view. I have a little bit of academic training in the study of religion, but let's say I'm right. Then there's still, 7 to 10 very different opinions and views on who Christ was and what he taught. And that still furthers the question, how do we know that any of these, let's say there's 7, how do we know that any of these 7 major schools really are accurately sharing who Christ was, what he taught? All these events happened 2,000 years ago. The hope is that any individual and any organization would be aligned with Jesus, with his teachings. But really, that's a hope. It's kind of a leap of faith. So I began a quest a long time ago, asking myself, well, who was Jesus really? What did he really teach? I knew that the church I was part of first the Methodist Church and then the Presbyterian Church. I knew they didn't have the full download. I knew that And as I studied more, I realized, wow, they really don't have the full download. And then I checked out Catholicism, said, wow, they don't have the full download either, but they seem to have some parts. And in the church I grew up in seemed to have some of the parts. Um, and it set me on this quest that I've been on, I don't even know how long, over 25 years, asking myself, who was Christ? What did he actually teach? I don't claim to have all the answers, but I have a very solid sense now. And this is thanks to a very interesting man named Bruno Groening. For any of my new viewers, Bruno Groening taught and was active in World War II, in post-World War II Germany, roughly 1949 to 1959. And he taught and he healed literally tens of thousands of people. In the most extreme cases, cancer, blindness, deafness, paralysis, insanity. In his presence, it would just vanish. It's not like Bruno Groening would talk to the person and get a diagnosis and then offer some kind of treatment. No, the diseases literally just vanished in his presence, and through people sharing his teachings and practicing his teachings. And that's continued to this day. I myself am alive because of Bruno Groening's teachings. My body was falling apart. And once I found out about his teachings and his the main practice he taught of how to absorb healing energy, within a very short time, I got my health back. And then I was very active and very involved in sharing Bruno's teachings. And then I started to notice, wait a minute, these teachings seems a lot like the teachings of Christ. And Bruno certainly seems to be, he reminds me of Christ. And of course, the miracles that happened around Bruno Groening. And other people made that comparison too, that it was like scenes out of the Bible. Bruno Groening would just talk and paralyzed people would stand up. Blind people would be able to see. And, Bruno would be up on a balcony talking, and there'd be like mass healings happening. And the more I thought about it, it's like, he really, he reminds me a lot of Jesus, actually. And then I found out that actually he himself said that what he was teaching was not his teaching, but simply the teachings of Christ. Now, it's very interesting. So in essence, you could say Bruno Groening was a minister in the truest sense of the word. To minister in English, it means to give aid. And he did give aid. He passed along this divine energy. He taught people how to take it in for themselves. And so many people were healed in his presence. The thing that differentiates Bruno Groening from most ministers, and I would be guilty of this, is he wasn't educated. I don't know how far he made it in, I don't think he completed high school. And by his own admission, he never read an entire book from cover to cover. And yet, people who met him said he seemed to know everything. How is this possible? Well, he explained that spiritually, he was just able to see and know things. And that actually all of us can do this simply through learning how to connect to God. So this, of course, is a radical, to even call Bruno Groening a minister he didn't complete high school. He never read a book all the way through. He didn't go to seminary, and he rarely quoted the Bible. He would sometimes, very rarely. He taught the teachings of Christ based on his direct knowing of them. He would say things like, the little bread giver, meaning an employer, he's like, don't be worried about getting fired. The little bread giver, your boss, may give up on you, but the big bread giver will never give up on you. And of course, he's referring to the line from the Lord's Prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread." That was kind of the way he would reference the Bible, but he just spoke from his own experience and his own knowing of the truth. This is so important, not just the teachings of Christ and Bruno Groening, and it's so important for us to come to know what's true in a direct way through connecting with, whether you call it God, the supreme, higher power, spirit. I had to not use the word God for a certain part of my spiritual journey because I've been taught such horrible things about God by people who didn't know God, by people who, as I said, just read things in books and said, well, this book says this, so this is how God is. Whereas Bruno Groening, and I would argue Jesus, were people who knew God directly in their own experience, and were able to communicate that experience. So each of us needs to learn how to determine what's true and what isn't. And it's no longer, I don't know if it ever was, but it's certainly not sufficient in this day and age to say, oh, well, I read it, so it must be true. Just the other day, I was out for a walk and I found a flyer. And this flyer made some claims about a current world event, very strong claims. And it stated it as fact. Da, 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 da. This is a fact. This happened. This was done here. Here are some sources. It even had web pages you could go and look up these claims. Well, I did a little research, and actually, it was completely bogus, completely made up. And many, many people. And then as I did more research, what I found out is many people have heard this rumor and really taken it as true when actually it has no factual basis. And that's what I came to realize. Most spiritual or religious teachings are. They're rumors. They're things that someone passed along, that someone passed along, that someone passed along, that someone passed along. Bruno Groening said, all of our problems stem from one thing. We listen to other people instead of listening to God. Now, the thing is, that can be a little scary because we've all been taught that from a religious point of view, well, first of all, our parents taught us that we had to listen and we had to obey, which is completely false. And parents often don't know what's best for their children. And Bruno Groening said, this is ridiculous. God allows free will. Who are parents to enforce their will on a child when God doesn't even do that? And we all know that this isn't to criticize any particular parent, but we all know that parents are often wrong. And yet they act as if they know what's right. And they force children to submit to their will. Well, this is in essence what has happened in the religious world. Instead of they can't religious leaders and I don't know that this is often consciously done, but given that religious leaders are often working with adults, they can't force them to submit, but they can threaten, and that's what's been going on. We've all been threatened with eternal hell, eternal damnation, if we do the wrong thing, if we believe the wrong idea, if we are part of the wrong church. We've all been threatened by it from a very early age. When I was about 6, I have a clear memory. I was talking to a good friend, and I was very scared. And I asked him, "What religion are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm Christian." I said, "Oh, good. That means he's not going to go to hell." I have no memory of anyone teaching me that. But of course, in the church I was brought up with, that was indoctrinated from a very early age. So What Bruno Groening asks of us, and hence I'm passing along the invitation, is to not, I'm not saying to throw out the books and throw out the things we've been taught, but to learn how to connect directly to the divine and then see if what we've been taught is true. In my experience, most of what I'd been taught, not just about God, but about life, was simply not true. So it can be a scary process. For any of us raised in a Christian denomination, which I was, we, on some level, what I'm asking, what Bruno asks of people, and I would argue actually what Christ asked of people, is to learn to listen to and follow God, not to follow other people. And let me add on to that, please don't believe anything I say. Find out for yourself. Find out for yourself if it's true. The model we've been given for religion and spirituality is to find a leader and follow. And according to the teachings of Bruno Groening, this is completely wrong, completely wrong. And I would argue, according to the teachings of Christ as well, completely wrong, that what we're to do is to follow God directly. That doesn't mean it's bad to go to church. That doesn't mean it's bad to watch a YouTube video. But what it means is we have to be very clear who has authority. And ultimately, authority belongs to God and to your soul. And I invite each person here to align their soul with God and to seek to know the truth that way. We've been taught to rely on people, places, and things, especially spiritually, especially religiously. And from what I've come to understand, that's completely wrong. It's completely contrary to what Bruno Groening taught. And as I delve deeper and deeper into the Bible, I can see that that's not what Christ taught at all. Now, there's one exception. There's one very important exception to that. Bruno emphasized it. Jesus emphasized it. I believe, I'm pretty convinced that what the version of it we have from Jesus is not accurate at all. But what we all need until we don't is we need a spiritual helper, a spiritual friend. In the East, it's often called a guru. In the West, we refer to it as a savior. If we want to walk the spiritual path, we need a connection with someone who's completed the journey. The spiritual journey isn't like a cross-country road trip. Like I could just hop in my car and not take my cell phone with me, not take a map, and wherever I'm trying to get to, I could eventually get there because I could just ask people along the way. Spiritual journey is not like that at all. According to Bruno Groening, and you'll find the same thing in the Bible, there's this force called evil, and it is a liar. It's a deceiver, and it sends untrue negative thoughts our way. Don't believe me? Watch your thoughts for an hour. For 1 hour, write down every thought that comes to your mind. Or just reflect on your own experience. We've all been off having a wonderful day, and then out of the blue, negative thoughts start slamming into us like a meteor shower and ruin our day. Well, Bruno Groening very simply called that evil. He also called it the devil, just like Christ. And without someone who is stronger than evil, we're never going to be free of evil. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have a physical connection with them. I'm not, and by the way, I am not such a person. This is not like this is not like a cult recruitment video like, "Hey, you need someone who's stronger than evil. I am. Join my cult." No, no, I'm just someone walking the path. But what Bruno Groening pointed out was that to be free of evil, you need a spiritual helper. Bruno Groening said that he himself was one such helper. He also spoke very highly of Jesus. He also spoke very highly of, by his phrase, Indian yogis. And he also made reference to a book called Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And one of the main premises of this book is that there are multiple masters alive on this earth behind the scenes. So, but please find out for yourself. Try and get rid of all your negative, and by negative, I don't mean painful, like pain is a part of life. We need pain, but your negative emotions, your negative thoughts, and negative habits, if you can get rid of all those on your own, then you probably don't need a spiritual helper. So please find out if Bruno Groening was right. And of course, in the Bible, this is, we have phrases, there are phrases where Jesus says, no one can come to the Father but by me. And phrases like that, which have been interpreted to mean that Jesus is the only spiritual help, only valid spiritual helper. I'm convinced those are not exactly what Jesus said. And but once again, you have to find out for yourself. But what I take from those verses, and what I take from the teachings of Bruno Groening, and what I take from my study of world religions, my undergraduate degree is in comparative religions. I've delved deeply into Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, to a lesser extent, Judaism, Islam, and Sikhism. Um, I've delved very deeply into the study of all these different traditions. And it's a very common idea, this need of a helper. The idea differs a little, tradition. Many traditions say it's impossible to experience, whether you call it salvation or enlightenment, but freedom from your problems. Many traditions say it is straight up impossible without a spiritual helper. This was a hard idea for me because in the 21st century, the new age, there's many new age ideas that are contrary to this, that are very popular. And so I invite people to do a little research on their own. First, do a little soul searching. Are you able to free yourself from all your own problems on your own? If not, having someone like Bruno Groening or Christ on your side might come in handy. It certainly has for me. It saved my life. Bruno Groening pointed out, and this is a I don't, let's see. He pointed out that it's a common idea in the East that a guru can take on some of the negative karma, some of the negative consequences of a devotee. And Bruno Groening himself would do this. He would take on people's illnesses and problems. In a nutshell, my understanding of the idea is we all have too much spiritual baggage to do it on our own. Too much, whether you call it karma or guilt or debt, spiritual debt from past misdeeds. But again, if you're able to free yourself without such a helper, more power to you. I was not one such person. So Bruno Groening gave a very simple way how to receive this divine help. And there's actually hints of it in the Bible, but this got largely left out. It's written that Christ spoke of the living waters, the waters of life. There's different ways to translate it. But what is it, and how do you receive it, and what do you do with it? And that's not really answered. In fact, there's only a couple verses that refer to it. Well, Bruno Groening based a lot of his teaching around it. And it's very simple how to take in. the waters of life. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back in a relaxed, upright position, if possible, not leaning against your chair. And then please close your eyes. Now, really separate yourself from all your problems, worries, fears, resentments, doubts. Give them over to your spiritual helper. I'm going to take a minute and do that now. Really empty your heart out of everything that's bothering you, physical, emotional, mental, relational, handing over these problems to your spiritual helper. Especially illness, separating ourselves from illness. Bruno Groening said, open your heart and unburden your heart. Let your dear little heart unburden itself. Passing these problems along. And now, ask your spiritual helper to help you receive the waters of life. Ask Christ. Ask Jesus. Ask Bruno. Ask a being who you trust to please help you take in the living waters, the stream of life, the divine stream, and observe your body, having the will, the intention to take this energy in. That's the practice. We'll spend a little time in silence, taking this energy in. Observing your body, taking this energy in. Observing your body, intending to receive the divine stream, the life stream, the living water. So I'd like to thank everyone who joined in. Of course, you can continue this practice on your own. If you're new to this channel and you'd like more information, there's going to be a link. If you reload this video, there'll be a link for it. Thanks for saying hi, forever loving everything. Heart received and returned, Germana. I'm utterly convinced the ultimate teaching of Christ is to rely on God, to humble ourselves before the Supreme, recognize our need for God's help, and with the help of a spiritual helper, take in this spiritual sustenance and to bring ourselves into alignment with the divine. Very grateful for this time together, very grateful for everyone who took the time to watch this, giving me the opportunity to share this. I wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful day. And beautiful, beautiful communion with the divine, with the help of our spiritual friends. Take care. Much love.